disclosures of personal prejudices? Anyone? No. Can I remind you all that to put your mics on mute unless you want to speak, show your hand. Okay. Item 3 is the minutes for accuracy, page 1, page 2, page 3. Can I have someone to propose and second that they're true?
Yeah, I moved you.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Anything on the minutes of the 22nd of October? Okay, I understand, Martin, you have got another meeting straight after this, so you were going on to the item 4, consultation response of the local toilet strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I may well stay, obviously, because the work programme is also later on the agenda. So I'll cover this item off, and I'll stay for the meeting when after Phil Holmes has done his item as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just briefly take members through the report. You would have previously been circulated the documents, the actual draft strategies that were put out to public consultation under separate cover. This is one of the projects that commenced under the last year's PDC, and obviously we agreed just to bring an overview back as to the results of the public consultation. So section 1 just outlines a little bit of the background for those who aren't familiar as to why we were doing this in terms of the requirements placed on local authorities. Section 2 just outlines some of the headline figures. We had 68 responses back from the public consultation, which was quite encouraging. And by and large, the responses were generally positive. So over 70% of people thought the strategy covered what was needed, and similar amount that it was strongly agreed that it was easy to understand, and that 77.8% agreed that it was informative, but 53% agreed or strongly agreed that it was the right length. Go on to just mention some of the points made by the consultees in terms of their responses. And unsurprisingly, everybody supported the strategy. Everybody supported the need for ongoing investment within public toilets. There were some concerns expressed around the strategy being too long, and we suspect that's because we issued an easy to read version and a full version, and I suspect that may not have helped people understanding if they only picked up the longer version of the strategy, and that's something we look to address in future drafts. So by and large, as I said, the overall responses were positive, but it will lead to some improvements in the way that we present such information in the future, particularly around the length of a future strategy, and how we publish what's already there, because some of the comments didn't seem to realise the extent of public toilets already being provided, not just in the city, but in the wider city and county of Swansea. Section 3 just outlines for the committee's visibility some of the work and initiatives that have happened or currently happening or have happened over the last 6 to 12 months in terms of new toilet provisions opening in the market, and also some of the toilets being planned as part of the arena development and the pod in the park alongside the digital arena, and the work ongoing on digital toilet map, and some of the toilets that are previously closed for certain reasons or various reasons now also being reopened. And finally, Cabinet in this current financial year 1920 committed to include a capital allocation for investment in existing public toilets, and we will be recommending that continues into next year. Clearly it is a matter for Cabinet to determine when the budget comes forward, but we are advocating an ongoing investment so that the existing toilets can be brought up to a standard that everybody's proud of. That's all I was going to cover, Chair, but I'd be quite happy to take any questions and observations from the committee. On mute, Chair, sorry.
went back off. There we are. I'm back on to mute. Sorry for that. Thanks, Martin, for the report. Any questions from the members, please?
Yes, could I ask a question, Chair, to Martin? I'm trying to get my hand there, but obviously I haven't come up yet. Martin, I think one of the areas I think what I've been picking up on regarding different people is that around the High Street area of Swansea, you come in there by the main railway station. Obviously, we're increasing footfall because of the new developments, purpose for student accommodation and that, and obviously bringing in the areas around the palace and that. I get asked, is there anything planned for that end of the High Street there? A new public convenience put there. I know many years ago there was one used to be in the middle of the road, obviously now filled in and it's the use of the main road network. But that's some of the sort of questions I've been asked. Really, is what's the council's plans if they on the top end of the High Street?
Okay, shall I pick that up, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, happy to answer that, Councillor. The reality is the strategy doesn't just deal with those public conveniences that the local authority runs. It mapped out all toilets available for public use. So you'll be aware that there is toilets within High Street Station, including changing places toilets. One of the things we did raise with Transport for Wales was whether or not when they reconfigure the layout there that they could make those publicly accessible without the need to enter the platform. To be honest, I haven't chased that up to see whether that has been done as part of the plan, but that would be the ideal solution to ensure those toilets are accessible. Part of the strategy going forward is to work with other providers and businesses to make their toilets as accessible as is possible. If clearly that isn't possible in High Street, then when it comes to future funding opportunities, part of the work that's been done is identifying where there is gaps in provision, hence why Swansea Market was included and done this year. So, and no doubt then it will be down to a prioritisation process as to where within, not just the city, obviously all of the city and county of Swansea, that priority would be needed. But yeah, hopefully what Network Rail are doing, sorry, Transport for Wales are doing would give us that accessible facility at the top end of High Street.
Thanks, Chair.
Can I call in Robert Francis Davis? I see he's got his hand up. Perhaps he wants to crack on with what Martin have also said.
Yeah, I think Martin is exactly right. You know, what's going on in High Street, not with just coastal housing, a tremendous amount of money being spent there, the amount of money that's been spent in Oldway House, where there's some 500 student apartments. Mariner Street, well under development now, as everybody can see, where there'll be another set about circa 750 student apartments. There will be shops on the ground floor underneath as well. On the Palace Theatre, but all these places will have their toilet facilities within them, and the toilet facilities that will be in the redevelopment, and I'm glad to say the Transport for Wales are going to look at the front of the railway station. We're also doing extra work up around the shops, and we purchased the old Lower Lamb public house, where we're going to look at working and getting community use on some of those shops and buildings there. So once you've got people living and working and using those facilities, when there's going to be, and in Jockey Street, this planning permission, I understand, has gone for another 500 student apartments. You can see there's going to be something like over 1,500 young people living in that top end. Then you'll see the shops that will open up to cater for those young people. And with those, obviously, there'll be all the facilities within it. And I think that makes a difference of one, people feeling safer, working together. You will see some of empty shops being used for cafes, wine bars, etc., convenience stores. And when there's people milling around and more people working and living there, it takes away lots of the problems that we have seen over the years in some of these areas. You're also creating far more employment as well, and that's really important. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob. Ladies first, Jim Burtonshaw.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. Firstly, it's sad now that the homeless are back on the street, and what provision have we made for them? And secondly, can I congratulate everyone involved in the DIY SOS build? I saw it on TV and it turned out fantastically, and I know we were heavily involved, and I want our thanks should go to all those that worked on it.
Thank you, Jim. Martin, homeless world question.
I just noted Councillor Andrew Lewis has put a hand up, so I'll defer to the cabinet member.
Okay, Andrea, welcome to the meeting. Would you like to answer June's question, please?
Thanks, Cyril.
For some reason, you've gone quiet.
Oh, sorry, you've gone on mute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
I'm having trouble with the buttons today. That happens sometimes. Yes, thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to come in on this. Actually, it's a really huge success story in terms of dealing with supporting our rough sleepers. Members will know that in the past we had up to 20 at times living on our streets. We're actually down to 2 now at the moment, and we're very proactive in our engagement with them, and we are making progress with those 2 as well. So we've actually housed 18 of them. Some of them have gone into permanent accommodation as well, with some wraparound support, and that's thanks to our Housing First programme. There are a number of people who've become homeless during the pandemic, and we've got currently around 80 people in the B&Bs on the seafront. And since March, we've helped and supported over 200 people to move through that process and move on to housing. So that's largely thanks to our housing teams, but credit has to go to our partners and the third sector organisations as well. I've never seen anything like it. Everybody is pulling together during this pandemic, and it's really excellent results. And I have to thank Welsh Government for their additional funding to help make this happen.
Can I thank the cabinet member for that response? It's good to hear.
Yeah. Me too.
Thank you.
Phil Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regards to the strategy, did we look at the public toilets within our parks and how we advertise them? The other thing on the strategy that seems to worry me a bit is the communication side of it. That's 2. Third, then I was looking at the 15 toilets that use radar key. Again, communications, because if you go on the Swansea Council website, it does say that the Radar National Key Scheme provides special keys for registered disabled people to access locked public. Does this mean that, as it says, if the toilet is locked, then this will open the toilet, so therefore it could be open to the general public? Or what I thought it was to open the disabled toilet that was inside the public toilet. So maybe I want clarification whether the people who want these keys know what they want them for. Because by reading our website, they don't. And is it, the other one is just for me, if you pay £3, is that key yours for life?
I went online myself.
We're having television from somebody.
Somebody's
So
Can I ask to put them all on mute? Nobody's talking somewhere anyway. Okay, Martin.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on those 3 points, I noticed Councillor Mark Thomas wants to come in as well, and maybe on this point or previously, but if I try and answer the Councillor Downing's queries. Yeah, the parks toilets that are open to the public are within the strategy and therefore should be included and published so that everybody knows that they are available with the relevant opening times. Obviously, toilets that are only available to staff wouldn't be, and some of our park staff have access to staff toilets. Obviously, they wouldn't be shown in the public domain. Communication, you're absolutely. One of the things that keeps coming across is, notwithstanding that Swansea is actually probably better served than many other councils, a significant number of other councils, in fact, many of which have transferred their facilities to private operators. So it is something, however, that each time we ask any consultation questions on it, there doesn't seem to be the visibility that there should be, which is why we're working with the British Toilet Association to develop the online mapping tools so that all of the public toilets within Swansea can be clearly visible, and then also mapping that across the whole of Wales so people, for example, tourists come into the area, can plan their journey, which is particularly important where people need to identify availability, for example, from outside of Wales or outside of the area. They do need to know as to where along the way they're able to access facilities if needed. So I think we do need to ramp up the communication of it as we go forward. The radar key issue, my understanding is, whilst they are locked to the general public, they are always accessible via the radar key. And again, there's been some discussions about whether that is the most appropriate way. But again, in consultation with the British Toilet Association, the view of their stakeholders is that that is the best way to manage those facilities rather than them being publicly accessible all of the time. But that is an ongoing debate which we will continue to work with. And yes, my understanding is, provided you don't lose the key is then available for life. So, but replacements can be purchased.
Thank you, Martin. I can remember as a taxi driver talking about keys. We used to have to pay £5. Would those keys be available to taxi drivers as well?
So you said flat 373, closer 376.
Sorry, Chair, there's a bit of background noise. I'm not aware that they're available to taxi drivers, but if nobody else on the call knows, I can certainly take that back. And
okay. I got Mark Thomas, got his hand up. Welcome to the meeting, Mark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I wanted to come in specifically. I think Martin has answered Councillor Downing's questions. Councillor Burtonshaw raised this thing about the DIY SOS down in Caswell Bay. I think we all would have watched it. Probably everybody in Swansea would have watched it. It was a fantastic programme, right? And I think what most people would not recognise, and this is not a criticism, it's impossible to recognise. And that's why I wanted to answer it rather than Martin. The work that I put in to make this a success was absolutely amazing, headed by Martin and his team. Too many officers to identify a name individually, and it covered a number of sectors of this authority. But I dread to think how many hours of officer time and work went into this. It was more than dozens. There was a lot of hours, because although we saw a programme for an hour on November the 9th or whatever it was, that was probably to make it. The actual filming was over 2 weeks, but the actual preparation, getting planning permission, everything went on for, it probably covered a 2-month period in total from start to finish. And in that, there was, as I said, there was officers. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all those officers, because what they've done is absolutely enhance the reputation of this authority and of Swansea as a whole, haven't they? You know, so good for them. And they asked for nothing, and you know, they just did it as part of their job, as well as all the other commitments that's been thrown at us with them. I mean, so it was a Herculean effort by all concerned, and I've just been glad I've had this opportunity to publicly thank them all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Any more questions? No? Oh, Robert, Francis?
Yeah, and just to back up what has been said by Councillor Mark Thomas to June's question on DIY SOS. I went down on the first day there with the leader, and Nick Knowles was there. And Nick Knowles talking to us, he said it's an absolute pleasure to come to Swansea, working with not just with the leader, working with Martin and the team and the officers. He has never had such support from any city anywhere in the United Kingdom like he's had from Swansea. And you could see and tell that he was really sincere about what he was saying. So that really looks good on Swansea. And Nick Knowles couldn't believe the sort of help that was forthcoming from everyone. He said, we make a phone call and everything sort of gets into action. So our congratulations really must go to all of Martin's team here for the work that they put in over and above what's expected of them. Well done all.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I too agree with what you're saying there, and I think it should be noted that these officers have gone above and beyond Call of Duty. And I also would like to thank Martin for all his hard work in the success of the DIY. And anything else, ladies and gentlemen? No? Okay. I'd like to welcome Phil Holmes, who is on the next agenda, item 5.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If I just say a few words of introduction, I've asked Paul Ralph to join us this afternoon as well, and hopefully between us we can help the discussion flow and hopefully answer any questions that you've got as well. So I suppose where do you start? It seems like a long time now since March. A lot's happened, but very early on, after the pandemic hit, we realised very, very quickly that, you know, apart from this being a human health crisis, this was going to be a significant economic crisis, whichever way you looked at it and however long it lasted. So we started work very early on, working with the Regeneration Swansea Partnership to put our heads together and to develop an economic recovery action plan for Swansea. And really what we were focusing on was what actions, what interventions do we need to take to support businesses through this difficult time, to support individuals, and to help get Swansea's economy back on its feet in terms of improving its resilience moving forward. So this action plan was born out of that recognition of a sense of urgency and resolve, I think, to make Swansea's economy stronger in the future. It will require resources. It's going to require some resources from the council, certainly some from Welsh Government and other partners. And the version that you've got today in the appendix is a very early version. I think an important aspect of this is that there's so much uncertainty around the future. We don't know the full extent of the crisis yet. We don't know how long we're going to be in this situation for. That, you know, whatever action plan we've got has got to be fluid. It's got to respond to the circumstances as they evolve over time. The other thing I'd say at the start as well is that this action plan is, if you like, a subset or a small part of the council's wider COVID recovery plan, which has been to Cabinet. So we're trying to play our part in assisting the council, Team Swansea, resolve this situation for Swansea. The other thing I'd say is that this isn't meant to encompass everything that we're doing. So this is very much over and above what the council's already doing in terms of existing regeneration and economic development work. Of course, all of that has continued as well during the crisis. So you will all have seen the progress that's been made on schemes like the Arena and Kingsway. So all of that's happened, but this is over and above what we thought we needed to do for Swansea. This is about a short-term sort of intervention. And the action plan that we're looking at really focuses on about 6 key things. There may be more over time, but we're looking at these at the moment. So it's about raising confidence, especially in terms of the business community. It's about supporting businesses in whichever way we can. There's something around local food and how we can champion the opportunities for local food producers. There's an aspect to do with tourism, supporting the tourism industry. Obviously, they've been hit very, very hard during this crisis. Developing skills and employability, that for me is crucial, because what this crisis has taught us is that no sector is immune, and some sectors may not recover. And so there will be large numbers of people who find they have to reskill and get employment in new sectors. So this is about looking at that and then making sure that the right skills are there to fill those jobs in the future. And also growing the green economy as well. We've known for a number of years that the green sector is a growth sector. And I think this has finally pushed us and given us the nudge that we need to really, really ramp that up. So in terms of the action plan itself, I'm not going to go through the detail, but just to give a flavour, I would mention that after the national lockdown, it was a very much a team effort to get the city centre and other parts of the county back open for business. So parts of the council, like city centre management, worked with Swansea Bid, the local traders, the business community, to get the city open again. And it was pleasing to see data from the Centre for Cities think tank, which is very well respected, which showed that Swansea was one of the most successful cities in the UK at attracting footfall back into the cities following the restrictions. So that was great to see the support that was there. We did things like the Swansea's Premises Adaptations Outdoor Grant. This is a real lifeline for those businesses that couldn't operate indoors. So we had a grant system there, 200 grants for businesses right across the county. And I think some of those businesses, well, I know a lot of those businesses wouldn't have survived without that support. We helped with loads of other grants as well, administering Welsh Government money in particular, whether it was the business rates grants or startup grants or lockdown grants. There was a lot of grants involved. And who knows, that may continue well into the future as well, but certainly there was a sense of urgency to get that money out to those companies that needed it, and those individuals that needed it as well. Employability provision, which is another area that we really, I think, excelled on. Looking at how we can support short-term unemployed, over 300 people supported since the lockdown. Over 130 helped into employment, 1,500 training weeks through the Beyond Bricks and Mortar work. So again, trying to get those people that have been hit by the crisis back into employment, local labour market as soon as possible. The Shop Local campaign, that's being launched this month, which will support local businesses and the economy. We've also been looking at other things that we can do now moving forward. So these are things that are in the pipeline. So looking at vacant space within the city centre, meanwhile uses in particular, how can we make more of those spaces going forward? Opportunity for a business centre to support new and growing businesses as well. We're looking at small startup bursaries to get new businesses started, maybe encourage self-employment. Also some work placements within the council and other providers as well. And we're linking in with the DWP Kickstart programme there. There's work around branding, so the Brand Swansea project, which I think will help change perceptions of Swansea and encourage investment in the future. And we're also looking at local food and supporting local food producers. So we've done quite a lot of work with this, in particular the Swansea Food Partnership. So this will really build on that, because I think that's been a real sort of ray of sort of light as part of this crisis in terms of tapping into local food and promoting that as a sector for growth in the future. So I suppose the last few months have been frantic for all of us, really, but in particular Paul Ralph and his team. We've had to come to terms with a different range of support that we've had to bring very quickly to businesses and individuals. But what I would say, I think the regeneration programme that we've got is obviously the right programme for Swansea. This crisis doesn't change anything. We still need, we need more jobs in the city. We need more skills and training. We need to support businesses. We need more office space, despite what people think. Offices are still in demand, especially for the social networking side of it. So home working, yes, has a place, but it's not the answer. And we need more investment in the public realm and green spaces. So all of that is happening. We need to continue with that. But this action plan, I think, is just reflecting the short-term urgency that we think we need to show towards the business community. That's all I was going to say at the moment. I don't know if Paul wants to add anything at this stage, or whether we just take questions. Thank you.
So if I might just add just a couple of quick comments. I think the main achievement in a way is where we've had an existing funding stream, we've been able to successfully negotiate with Welsh Government to bend those programmes to meet the demands of the crisis, and particularly with the outdoor premises grant, I think we're pretty much ahead of the curve. We take part in a national network of authorities on that programme. We were the first out of the trap, and we've issued the largest number of grants of any authority in Wales. So we're well ahead of the curve. Other authorities will be starting in the new year, for example. So I think we've probably pushed as hard as we can on all fronts to make sure that the main projects keep going, and making sure that we are responding to the crisis and continuing to adapt. But otherwise, could go with everything Phil has said.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Over Francis Davis, what's to come in?
Yeah, I wouldn't want the officers to understate what they are doing. It's, I would say, helping people trade outside the premises. Swansea, as an authority, are probably been an exemplar in the United Kingdom, especially in Wales. Paul Ralph and his team have been great, but not just those. Environmental health have been first class. Licensing have been first class. They all the different departments, again, stood up to be counted, worked together. Now, like June, we've been on this council a long time, June, 37 years. And in those 37 years, we probably worked with about 11 chief executives or more who have said, we are one council. It's seamless, we are working together. But during this pandemic, we have actually seen the departments really working together and going out, meeting people. There's one business in Mumbles that one day took £50, and then after the help we gave by just using 2 parking spaces, within a couple of days was taking £1,200 in that day. That difference meant that 16 people, not full-time employees, but part-time employees, were actually retained working there and found, their jobs were there to go back to, because that business could have gone. And the letter coming in saying, thanks to the highways team, the environmental health workers, our licensing, and Paul's Ralph's team, helping that has sustained 16 jobs. That's just one premises. In the report, it says 207 businesses were helped to trade outside. You multiply that, if it's only 5 jobs with each, that is well over 1,000 people. Now, if we were to lose one business employing 1,000 people, it would be headlines nationally. So don't underestimate what Swansea have done here. Welsh Government have now decided to spread that out further. So a real big pat on the back to all our staff that were going out. The amount of emails I've had from businesses thanking us as a lifeline to keep them going and to ensure that they've survived. So again, a big thanks. It's not often you hear me over the years giving thanks to officers, but they really earned it, and we should give praise where it's due.
Thank you, Rob. June, you'd like to come in?
Yes, thanks. Robert said some of what I was going to say. Congratulations to all our staff. Phil did say earlier on that we were going to encourage shop locally, which I'm very pleased at. But we must also thank those local shops, although they've had their own difficulties, have been supporting the people in need in our different wards. And I think they've done an excellent job, and we should thank them as well.
I agree with you there, June. Local shops have done a lot throughout COVID, helping the needy and the vulnerable throughout COVID. Any more questions?
Chair, can I come in? I can't, for some reason, get the hand up on my screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
come in.
obviously, it's very encouraging to see that Swansea is clearly taking the lead in supporting our businesses and of course within the city centre as well. We can obviously see that by the amount of people that are out and about again following the lift of the lockdown there. I'd like to ask a question to Paul, if I could, Chair, in regards to the Appendix A, in regards to the application for the Copperworks pontoon. Paul, have you any idea when we will have a decision on this?
We're due a decision this week, Councillor. So we've got part of the budget in place through the Transforming Towns programme already, and we're seeking to probably double it through the Fisheries Local Action Group with Mandy Jones there. So we're due a decision this week. So touch wood. But there'll be something there either way. It'll just depend, you know, the quality and possibly whether there is one or two sites that we're able to take in with the funding available. So we'll know this week, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Paul. That's encouraging. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Any more questions? I would also like to reiterate what Francis Davis has said to Phil and Paul and all the other departments, environment. Thanks for all their hard work in throughout COVID and keeping us safe. And thanks for the agenda item, all the work you've done on that for presenting it to the committee today. Can I go on to agenda item 6 if there's no more further questions? No? Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing else? Okay, I'd like to thank Phil and the officers for the meeting this afternoon, and I'd like to go on to the agenda item 6 now, which is Community Infrastructure PDC Outline Work Plan for 2020-22. Is that it? Any questions? Martin?
Yeah,
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously couple of points just to make. Firstly, the draft work plan assumes that the remit of this particular PDC will be amended at council to include environment, because a couple of the items within the draft work plan probably fall outside the current economy and infrastructure remit. So as I understand it, it's intended to take a report to council in December, extending the remit to include environment activities, and therefore that's why you will see a couple of the elements included in there that are probably outside the current remit of the PDC, but will be included once that those terms of reference change. So I just wanted to highlight that. And secondly, more of a question really is around confirming the order you might like these items to come in terms of the December PDC and then the January PDC, so we could line officers up to make sure that we've got reports prepared in advance for you.
members, but the question is out to you now. Which way do you want this presented in for the next PDC? No. June?
Yeah, it is going to be difficult during this COVID thing. So perhaps we don't want to inundate the officers with work. They've got enough on their plates. If perhaps you and the vice chairman can talk to the officers and sort something out for the next agenda, because we're in limbo really with the COVID actions. So that's what I'd ask you to do.
Sorry, Councillor Downing want to come in first?
Yeah. Phil?
Yeah, it's just going back to the two items we've just discussed. The toilet strategy. Is that it? Do we finish? We haven't got an input, or do we need an input, or do we think it's good enough as it is? And the same with the recovery action plan, because the first thing here is local and regional economy and recovery response. So the action plan in front of us, is that what the response is going to be about? Because we've done it, we've had people talk about it, but what are we going to do as a policy group about it? Do we think it's good enough? Do we think it's okay? So it just goes, and because I got to be honest, it is good. It's very, I've been through each one of them. It's an excellent report. I don't think there's anything we can actually add to it. Then, because does it go to cabinet? Has it been to cabinet? Then the question is, if it's been to cabinet, what's it doing here? So what's the next steps on those? Sorry about that, Martin.
Sorry. Martin, come back.
I'm sure colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding, the action plan, I'll double check with Phil Holmes, who's still on the call. The action plan hasn't yet gone to cabinet. An overview of the themes has been to cabinet for information, but the detailed action plan that you've seen today hasn't been. So really it was for the committee to give their views as to whether or not that plan was comprehensive enough, and then in conjunction with the cabinet member then recommending that to cabinet for adoption as that aspect of the recovery plan.
Okay,
Exactly.
Martin.
Yeah, Martin, spot on. Yeah.
Phil, did you want to come in? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, Martin, spot on. The intention was to bring it here to see whether, as a draft, whether you wanted to make any changes or amendments to it, and then the intention was to proceed to cabinet when we were happy with it.
Robert, do you want to come in?
Yes, please. This economic recovery plan, I've looked through it in detail, but it's also gone to the Swansea Regeneration partnership that we have, and on that partnership we work with, we got the university delegates, there's Housing Association have delegates to it, the chief executive of the Business Improvement District are there are lots of private sector businesses within the city. They've looked at this recovery plan and added to it, and they think it's a good plan. So it was important to come to the Policy Development Committee so that you can look at it. It's not a fait accompli, and as Phil Holmes has said, and Paul Ralph, this is evolving all the time, and so it can be added to. But it was important that the Policy Development Committee looked at it, and I'm glad to hear that Councillor Phil Downing says that he thinks it's a good plan. He's been through it, and there's not much you can add to it. And I think most people has had that reaction, but it is important that people realise it is always evolving. Other obstacles could crop up in a way in which we might have to take different decisions and change the way we do things. So I'm glad it's been well received by you as a committee. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Phil, do you want to come back on that?
Well, no, just to say that if there's no input on this from any of the other members of the committee, then I've got no problem. Just well, we don't move anything, but I've got nothing to add to this. But like Robert says, something may crop up in the future. I'm saying the near future now, that could affect any of these. And of course, Paul has got his finger on the button, so if any grant does pop out, he'll find it straight away and then pass it on to the businesses and the centres, which I think are suffering at this moment in time, as well as the centre of Swansea. I was shopping there this week, and I got to be honest that the market was buzzing, and the streets were pretty busy, not too busy, not like Cardiff, because then you've had people complaining there was too many people in a small square area, so you can't win. But I can say that when I was around on Monday, it was pretty busy in Swansea, and that's what we want to see.
Okay. If there's no other questions, can I move it that we... Oh, sorry, Martin.
Sorry, apologies, Chair. Sorry to prolong it. What I was just going to suggest is that perhaps it would help the committee is when we report this through to Cabinet, there are some items within the action plan that could well lead to further policy decisions down the line. So they're still work in progress. So perhaps what might be useful is if at Cabinet we identify in conjunction with the Cabinet member which activities in that action plan, the specific activities, will need further policy development, then they can be specifically referred back to this committee to work on in isolation. So whilst you've had the overarching one today, because Councillor Down is absolutely right to bring us back to the fact it's a policy development committee. So if we can identify I've had a quick look through, and it's probably about half a dozen of the actions will require further decisions. So if we summarise those as part of the Cabinet report, and then we can bring them back to ratify by this committee as part of your work programme for the year, that might be a way of tying up then the loose ends to make sure that it loops back into the policy development aspect.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Right, so we decide now that we take this through to Cabinet, but still be aware it's a work in progress. Okay, thank you. We still need now more homes and housing decarbonisation strategy. When should we fit that one in? Can we take it for the 17th of December?
Apologies, Chair. If I could just comment, you may recall before this amended work programme was drafted, the last committee meeting agreed to have the final green infrastructure strategy brought back in December. Apologies, I should have said that at the start. That's prior to that then going on for formal approval by the council. So given that consultation has now ended, if possible, bringing that one back on the 17th would be quite useful. That allows then the remit of the PDC to include the environment aspect, meaning that from January onwards, and if it's okay with the committee, I'd be happy to link in with the Chair and Vice Chair to just confirm the remaining onwards and put together a draft programme for you to consider at your next meeting.
There we are. Yes, we'll do that then, Martin.
Yeah, fine.
Is there anything else? No? Sam, is nothing else? No. Well, I think we can conclude the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
That's
Thank you.
plenty of time for the next meeting.